The Sierra Nevada mountains can be breathtaking in the spring. Sunlight filters through tall pines, the air smells of resin and cold earth, and the world feels distant, quiet, almost untouched. But in the tiny resort community of Keddie, California, silence took on a different meaning in 1981. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't calm. It was a kind of silence that settles over a place after something terrible has occurred, something that should never have happened. Cabin 28 still stood back then, a modest structure, worn at the edges like many in rural Plumas County. To the residents, it was simply another cabin in the woods. To the Sharp family, who had moved there in search of stability and a fresh start, it was supposed to be home. They had come to Keddie to escape hardship, to find a quieter life where the children could breathe without the weight of the world pressing on them. Glenna Sue Sharp, a single mother, worked tirelessly to provide for her children. Teenage daughter Sheila, her brothers John and Rick, and little Greg and Tina. Sue wasn't perfect, but she was strong, resilient, protective. She had brought her children here to keep them safe. But evil, sometimes, does not need an invitation. April 11th, 1981, began like any ordinary Saturday. Kids laughed in the open spaces between cabins. The scent of pine needles drifted through the spring air. The Sharp children came and went, mingling with friends. There were small arguments, bits of gossip, teenage jokes, nothing unusual. That night, teenage Sheila chose to stay over at a neighbor's house, leaving her younger siblings at home. Her brothers John and his friend Dana Wingate made plans to return home later. Inside cabin 28, a warm yellow light glowed behind the thin curtains. The hum of nighttime in Keddie, distant cars on Highway 70, a dog barking, a screen door creaking, mixed with the laughter of children settling in for the night. No one noticed a pair of eyes that watched the cabin from between the trees. No one heard footsteps crunching softly on pine needles. No one imagined that the air itself was shifting, that the life of the Sharp family was entering its final hours. When Sheila walked back to cabin 28 the next morning, the world still seemed quiet. The sun was just beginning to rise above the peaks, coloring the sky in shades of pale orange. Sheila reached for the door. Nothing could prepare her for what she found inside. She screamed. Neighbors came running. Within minutes, the horrifying discovery echoed across Keddie like a shockwave. 3 victims, a 4th child missing, 3 boys in the back room, still alive, untouched, unaware of what had unfolded only feet away. The crime scene was beyond comprehension. Brutal, calculated, personal, and somehow, impossibly, silent. No one had heard a thing. No one had seen the killers leave. And little Tina, 12-year-old Tina, was gone. The Plumas County Sheriff's Office launched an investigation immediately, but mistakes were made almost instantly. Evidence wasn't properly handled. Witness statements were overlooked. Tips were ignored. Potential suspects walked freely around the crime scene. A local deputy even claimed the scene was too overwhelming to process properly. But one fact stood out. The killers had spent time inside the Sharp home. They had been comfortable, controlled, unhurried. Most investigators believed the motive wasn't random. It was targeted. Someone knew the family. Someone wanted to terrify them. The name that surfaced repeatedly in hushed circles throughout Keddie was Martin Smart, a man who lived just a few cabins away. He was volatile, known for anger, manipulation, known to hate Sue. He wasn't alone that night. He had a friend staying with him, a man with a violent past. Both men gave conflicting stories. Both had suspicious alibis. One even wrote a letter later, confessing indirectly to the killings. But somehow, none of it resulted in charges. Files went missing. Reports were misplaced. The truth was there, scattered, but no one in authority seemed willing to gather it. Months passed with no answers. The Sharp family left Keddie, unable to breathe in the place where their home had been destroyed. Cabin 28 sat empty, rotting under the weight of what had happened inside. But the case took another chilling turn months later, when a man stumbled upon a set of remains near Feather Falls, miles away from Keddie. Tiny bones, a small jacket. Tina Sharp had been found. That discovery should have revived the case, should have brought urgency, should have forced the investigation forward. Instead, it gathered dust. As years passed, Keddie faded. The once quiet resort town became a ghost of itself. Families moved away. The cabins aged. The laughter that once echoed across the pines disappeared. But the story lingered. Local kids whispered about Cabin 28, daring each other to approach it. Adults avoided the topic altogether. And the few who remember that night carried a weight they couldn't shake. The truth felt close, always close, but it never fully surfaced. It was as if something invisible held it underwater. Decades later, renewed interest brought investigators back to the scene, older now, wiser, and determined to find answers where others had failed. New evidence was analyzed. Old files resurfaced. DNA technology offered possibilities that didn't exist in 1981, and the more they pulled at the threads, the more obvious it became. The original investigation had been deeply mishandled. Potential suspect had been overlooked or protected. Key evidence was ignored. Statements from witnesses contradicted the official reports. The truth had been within reach, yet allowed to slip away. One investigator said, "This was never a cold case. It was a case that someone froze on purpose." Even today, the Keddie Cabin Murders remain one of California's most haunting unsolved cases. A story where the victims were failed repeatedly, first by violence, then by the system meant to protect them. Cabin 28 was eventually demolished, but tearing down the structure didn't erase what happened there. Sheila Sharp and her children did everything they could to build a better life. And in the shadow of the pines, that life was stolen from them. The case is a chilling reminder that sometimes the monsters are real, sometimes they live next door, and sometimes, even when the whole truth lies on the table, justice never arrives. Yet the story is not forgotten, not by the families, not by the investigators still searching, not by the people who lived through the aftermath, and not by the countless viewers, decades later, who feel the same unshakable question rising inside them. How could something so horrific happen and no one be held accountable?